Welcome back to another episode of Sketchy Situations, where I play Stroke of Luck, an actual play series using Ironsworn Starforged, written and designed by Sean Tompkin. I am your narrator, host, player, and generally everything for this channel. I want to thank everybody for their patience. This episode is so excruciatingly late, but it is going to be very worth it. There's a reason why the name is the way it is. I wanted to give this story a lot more depth than little baby steps. In our last very short episode, Erin Slater had made it to the excavation level of the mines, and he had no idea where to go, so the first place he went was straight into an argument. And he decided to try to solve the issue in a brotherly sort of way, heart to heart, and it failed. He ended up falling back on his old habits, pulled out his badge, and he ended up caught up in a hostage situation where, if you didn't get it last time, it was a Fifth Element reference he used to resolve the situation, with the last bit of him holding one of the captors suspended in mid-air. We're going to pick up very briefly after that point. But first, we're going to make a connection with Brennan Carr, the medic from the last episode. We've done a bit of help for him in different ways in terms of trying to help him with his argument, and now we've handled this hostage situation. I think this deserves a bit of focus on an existing relationship. So rolling it, I have a weak hit. That is an 8 versus a 5 and an 8. So with a weak hit, when you're trying to make a connection, you still give them a rank and a roll, and when you use them in a situation closely associated with their role, you can add 1 and take 1 momentum on a hit, no matter. But on a weak hit, this connection comes with a complication or a cost. I'm just going to leave that there instead of trying to force what it is yet, and we're going to find out as we go, because it's going to come up. It always does. Now, where we're at now, Erin Slater is standing off to the side while Brennan is seeing to the injuries of the criminals that were just apprehended. They're not really resisting at this point because they know what might come if they resist, as well as being surrounded by a group of security guards. While Erin Slater is standing there waiting, Evelyn, the guard from before, makes her way over to him, and she's awkwardly stands next to him. So, are those natural? Erin raises an eyebrow and looks at her. Are you asking, do I have implants? What, are you interested? And she blushes so bright. That's not what I meant. I was talking about your abilities. Yeah. What did you think I was talking about? And he laughs and walks away when he sees Brennan is free. He steps up to him while he's barely standing up and brushing his hands off of the situation and motioning for the junior medics to continue on without him. Erin starts with him immediately. So, I tagged along and fixed the problem. What did you have to give me? Brennan takes him well off to the side, where he's still visible but out of earshot of everyone else. Just really quick, let's ask the Oracle, what is it that Brennan has for Erin Slater? So I'm coming up with an infested ship, which is awesome. I mean this both as a creative and entirely sarcastically. He speaks in a hushed tone. A ship crashed not that long ago. We went out to see if there were any survivors, and if not, see what was salvageable. A team went out, but only one person came back. I was the one that found him. He closes his eyes and hangs his head somewhat, as if in a moment of silence. Erin recognizes it for what it is, but he presses on anyway. Okay, what does that have to do with anything? What was inside? Brennan shrugs. I don't know. Whatever they saw, they won't be right again. He looked agitated, and Erin can sense the guilt coming off of this guy, but he doesn't have the time to play the empathetic ear. And he says, so this is the first you're mentioning this. Look, everyone knew, but what were we supposed to do? We stopped all expeditions, but the two of you showed up. I was trying to get to him, but then I got stopped. Erin nodded, understanding, and says, and that's where I came in. So I think at this point I'm going to check out what Brennan's complication is, because something about Erin showing up on the spot was the catalyst for him feeling like he needed to drag him into the situation. I have 42 character goal, and it's to make an agreement. So making an agreement, clearly he's about to strike a bargain. I'm just gonna cheat like no one's business and roll all 4 core oracles, and I have makeshift intelligence from descriptor and focus, and finish destiny from action and theme. A makeshift intelligence we know can be machine intelligence or AI. In my version of the Forge, AI is a thing, so we're going to go with that. Finish destiny, I'm not too sure. Maybe he wants them to finish the mission that the AI was set to complete. Maybe he wants them to finish destroying it. Let me just keep going. So Brendan says, when you flashed your badge, I saw your ring. And he points to the black iron ring that's wrapped around Erin's left index finger. That other hunter, he's going to find out about the ship one way or the other. But if you swear this for me, he'll find out in a way that might save his life. Erin doesn't like these choice words because he's sort of involved in this. He normally doesn't like to ask a ton of questions, but again, his life is involved in this statement. He asks, how do you know so much? For the sake thereof, I'm going to gather information. Because he's pressing this guy for extra intel that may not necessarily be something he just wants to hand away willy-nilly. Now we have here a weak hit, which is a 5 versus a 5 and a 1. On a weak hit, we are provided new insight, but it complicates our quest, and let's envision what we discover. I also take a +1 momentum, so that puts me at +10 momentum. I'm going to try something different here. I'm going to roll a story clue, and I have 65. Story clue involves someone you trust. I'm not going to claim that Erin trusts anyone on this planet at all so far, but the closest person he might think is honorable, I'm going to say, is our most beloved goose we've been chasing, Juro Quan. He's putting all his eggs in his basket for this one guy. Now, how does an AI and a mission that they need to finish have anything to do with Juro? I'm imagining that this AI core is still functioning. There's still some processes going on in the ship that still works. And that's what drew Juro here. So let's envision the situation. Brennan says, Juro didn't land here by chance. And he's not studying the fauna because he's a zoologist. There's an AI on there still sending a signal. And then he looks anxious as he looks over Erin's head. I need you to swear on it. Now. Erin notices the urgency of the situation, and if he isn't quick, he's going to lose his opportunity. It really complicates the situation because he wants to know more, but he doesn't have time. So he swears his first vow ever on this show. He claps Brennan's hand in a firm grip, pulling him in a little bit. It's the same hand where he wears the black iron ring. And he lowers his mask, so it's only covering half his face. Stares Brennan straight in the eye. I give you my word that I'm going to get that AI core and find out what that last mission is. And we're going to write down this vow as retrieve the AI core from the infested ship and find out what that final mission was. Because honestly, we don't know what the mission is, but I have a weak hit. That's becoming fairly common now, especially when I need to use heart. I did roll with a extra +1 because this is towards a connection, even if it is a complicated one. Now, on a weak hit, you are determined but begin your quest with more questions than answers. We're going to take +1 momentum, which isn't necessary because I'm already at max momentum. I could have burnt it to turn it into a strong hit, but it looks like we're going to be meeting Juro. So that seems like a better time because this guy is a curveball for Erin. We're also going to develop the relationship a bit because we're taking on a perilous quest for a connection. Since I set Brennan towards a troublesome, we get 3 boxes out of 10, which is boss. But let's slide on a little bit. In this hurried moment, Brennan pulls out his unipad, and I like to imagine these rusty brown looking with the screen also a yellowish color. Think about the Fallout screens. It's steampunky enough to look really old school, but it's also high-techy enough that after he inputs some information, he's able to swipe it up and he sends the map to the traps where Juro is and the coordinates for the ship that they need to be going to. He quickly leaves, getting out of Dodge, and Evelyn is right behind him, cutting a cross look at Erin. There's a nagging at the back of Slater's head to do something about it, but he has his own concerns. And one of them is, why do we need this core? How does Brendan know all of this if this guy he helped went pretty much insane? Why was he afraid to share this information? And what about that signal drew Juro in? I mean, he is a hunter, but what Evelyn said before wasn't a lie. Hunters aren't known for their charity. He makes his way to the traps, and we're just going to get him there. He was given the information on how to get there, so we're not going to set a course, and we're not going to undertake an expedition. We made it for a change. But when he arrives to the traps, there is Juro. And just in case you forgot, which probably you have because it's been a few episodes, we have Juro Quan. His pronouns are he, him. His role is a artifact hunter. His call sign was bingo, but I'm not feeling it, so we're going to reframe that, and his call sign is nails, which I think is a much better way to depict someone that is, well, tough as nails. His disposition is haunted and stern, and when we first see him, we have wiry and large. So we're imagining this hard face, large fellow, thick muscles. And as we come onto the scene, he's pulling a creature out of one of these traps. It's one of those mouse kapuffs, little marshmallow thing, chittering and snapping. He's got it in his bare hand, completely unconcerned. Slater just shivers looking at it. Between Juro's physique and the mouse kapuffs is really against approaching, but he has a job to do. So he steps up and says, "Misleading little bastards, aren't they? They look as soft as a cloud, but bitey as a flea. Aren't these things supposed to run in groups?" Juro peeks up around this thing at Erin. Slater can see Quan's eyes clearly. His visor is transparent. Quan is studying him, and thankfully he's still wearing his full face mask, especially this far at the edge of the excavation area. He nods eventually and says, "They're normally docile to my understanding, but something has them agitated." And he stuffs the creature back into the trap. "And who might you be?" "Let me introduce myself. You can call me Ghost, and I'm just someone with a bit of information you could use." The tightening of Juro's expression through the visor is obvious. He does not like this choice of words, and he's very clear about it when he says, "I'm going to assume you want something for this information." And Ghost holds up his hand. "It's not robbery, it's not favors. I just need your help." And I'm going to roll compel plus heart because he's not lying. He genuinely needs Juro Quan's help, and he's trying to really express sincerity with this. And we have the best thing to happen in this situation, a miss with a match. I know the timing seems perfect because I saved that plus 10, but I assure you, this is exactly what we expected when we finally would reach Juro, this guy we've been chasing down for 3 episodes. Now, if I was to continue with this miss with a match, the complication would be someone important reveals their problematic secret or history. So let's continue a little bit. Juro does not like this still. And even though Slater keeps expressing that he doesn't want any money and he doesn't want any favors, Juro asks, what kind of help are you expecting? And that's when Erin says, I can't tell you yet. And that was the absolute wrong choice of words because this sounds completely illegal. Juro starts moving towards him as if he's going to do something aggressive. And Erin jumps back a few steps. Ball is already swept up into his hand, ready to defend himself. So this is where I will burn my momentum. The best time to do that is now a 10 versus an 8 and an 8. I have a strong hit with a match. The most fun option here is to take the same complication from the miss and turn it into an opportunity. Because this came from burning momentum, it suggests that Erin lays out all of his cards, or at least most of them. For some reason, it piques Juro's interest, which is exactly what he needs him to do, at least be interested in helping him. So he's half ready to launch this ball at Juro when, with one last bid, he says, I've been having these visions since I got too close to a vault. And someone told me you can help. Juro stops and stares at Ghost again. He has these deep, intense looks, and thankfully, but even with a lack of facial detail, Juro's stance calms down and he nods. I believe you, and I might be able to help you. Erin's first thought is to ask what was the change of heart, but we can say we can reach a milestone though on our vow of removing the vault's curse. It's just a dot, but it is a dot more than we had before. And we can say that we can move forward with a little bit of progress on our relationship with our connection, Juro Quan, the artifact hunter, by leveraging help in desperate circumstances. Now that Juro is at ease, he gestures to Erin and says, so what is this information you have for me? Erin pulls out his unipad slowly from his jacket and starts tapping away. It's a location. A ship crashed that might shed some light on what's going on. Juro inclines his head. How do you know this? A vision? A hunch. As Juro receives the information, data dances across his visor. This is definitely some pricey equipment. He is no low down and dirty hunter. Finally, he nods. You're coming with me. But before we set out, check your gear. This might take a while. And it's not that Ghost had any objections. He needed to complete this vow anyway, but he didn't like the definitive tone. Now we're going to secure an advantage. We're doing this with wits because we're checking our equipment, just observing, and we have a weak hit. But it's still going to give us +2 momentum. So, as we said back in the first episode, Ghost left most of his gear back on his ship, not expecting this to be quite so complicated. Thankfully, Juro has enough to accommodate, so they can get moving right about now. They exit out of the border area and expose themselves to the hazy light of the outside. A smattering of color, all sorts, tower and stretch on beyond them on fungi heads and mossy, spongy ground. Erin takes note of the loud chittering and other identifiable sounds that seem to turn on blast in this open air. So, it's time to get moving and undertake an expedition to the infested ship. And we're going to roll with wits because Erin's sort of following along behind Juro and trying to keep his eyes out. We have a weak hit. That is a 5 versus a 4 and a 7. I can still mark progress on travel to the infested ship, so that's 2 out of 10. When we undertake an expedition, as so happened very much when we were in the tunnel, we mark progress and either take a mechanical hit or take a narrative complication. I followed a cue from the very back of the book, just at the end of the Oracle section, to sort of fill in the blank, and that's what I did by rolling all 4 oracles again, and I received defeat, health, and obscured viewpoint. It sounds mechanical enough to me, especially with the defeat health. But I'm going to take from spirit and momentum instead of health. I personally believe that health should not be touched unless it's an absolutely dangerous situation. But for now, Erin feels his pride a little pricked. He's getting the worst of this expedition from the very start. He's not as tall as he used to be, not to mention he's barely keeping pace with Juro's much bigger footsteps, and it's making him take deeper breaths, which means he's wasting oxygen cartridges if he doesn't improve his breathing. The mask has a basic filter system, but it's meant for emergencies, not extended use. Juro doesn't even notice that he's going through this, so he stops, squats to rest on the balls of his feet, and rests his forearms on his knees. He lets his head hang and takes in a few full breaths. Finally, he says, "I need to take a breather." Juro turns around, completely confused. We just started. Erin looks up at him. Well, I just need a break. They haven't been traveling for more than a half an hour at absolute best, and the area they're in isn't clear, so that means anything can sneak up on them if it wants to, but Erin needs to take this break. And while he's taking in these breaths, a scent filters in through his mask and fills his nose. It's humid, pungent, almost foul, which is the nature of most fungi as it lives off of decaying material. After a bit of silence, Erin speaks up. "You travel like this often? You should focus on your breathing," Juro says, apparently less inclined to speak. Erin pressed on anyway. "I guess often is an understatement in your line of work." Juro glares down at him. "If you can talk, then we can go." Erin jumps to his feet and starts moving ahead, taking the lead this time. I was just thinking the same thing. So we're going to undertake an expedition again, and a weak hit, 6 versus a 10 and a 5, and I have nowhere near enough momentum to make that a strong hit. And just like before, either I take a mechanical hit or a narrative, and I'm going to be a little conservative, so let's take a narrative hit and roll planet side peril, and I have corrupted or mutated life form. Yikes. So I want to thank everybody again for supporting this show and listening in. All your comments, praise, tweets, retweets, just thank you so much. We're going to see how this pans out in the next episode as we confront now a corrupted or mutated life form. And finally, Erin has met up with Juro, and he's even gone ahead and sworn a vow. We're finally thickening this thin plot. Thank you so much, and stay in trouble.